There's a man named Richie, and 2 months ago, Richie had no followers, no money, and had left his job working at a gas station. And now, Richie's a millionaire with 25,000 followers on Twitter and 700 people in his Patreon paying him a total of $150,000 a month. The most impressive of all is he has a long list of fans DMing him, thanking him for changing their lives. If you don't know who Richie is, he's more commonly known as Richie the Bull on Twitter. And Richie's the new Rain Man in town, with a self-reported penchant for finding 100x to 1000x crypto gems. And these are gems that he's finding when the market cap is only $50,000. And as a man of many hats, one of them being a man who likes to degen into tiny token, and the other is following the best and the biggest brain crypto influencers in the world to see what they're doing, I was intrigued by Richie. So with my eyes wide open and nothing but hope in my heart, I joined Richie's Patreon. And I added up the results of his 100x claims to see exactly how much money we would make if we invested in them. We even actually went and located Richie's wallet. So to see exactly how much you can make by following someone like Richie's suggestions, hit that like button down below, put on your 1000x gem hat, and let's jump in. Now, if there's one thing Richie has going for him, it's confidence. He's constantly tweeting things like this: "It's my job to make sure that all of my followers make money in crypto," which I mean is a huge responsibility for a zero-sum game. And more than that, it's a task that's impossible for probably 99.9% of traders. But of course, as you've just seen, Richie is not your average trader. He has an incredibly impressive track record on Twitter, which is exactly what caught my attention initially. I came across this post. "So many people are thanking me for my 25x on Dione, 19x on Casper, 15x on Loop, 15x on Nexa, 13x on RXD, 9x on Alt, 8x on Rio, 4x on ECT, and so much more. Let's find the next 100x gem." And what makes these tweets even more impressive are the replies he gets. Mary commented, "You're the best, bro. I made like 5k from your calls last week alone." And so all of Richie's socials, from his Telegram group to his Twitter, all push towards one thing: his Patreon, where he first reports these 100 to 1000x gems. So naturally, we joined his Patreon. Now, there's two important things to consider before we get to the juicy returns. Firstly, Richie absolutely prints money for his Patreon. He only launched it a couple months ago. It's rapidly grown to 700 people, and each of these people are paying him between $100 and $1,500 per month. Secondly, this is a paywall, so I can't put all of Richie's Patreon out here on a YouTube channel for everybody to see. So obviously I'm going to be leaving out most of the token names, but I'm going to be including the ones that he has made publicly available. And of course, we'll use this private data to reveal his overall results. But let's just say, as soon as I did enter this Patreon, my FOMO started to disappear, because the bull's end really just wasn't pretty. It was Richie making a lot of calls. You know, I was half expecting this crypto savant at his computer sniping these crypto coins that takes him months and months to research, but in reality, he was reporting on a 100x to 1000x gem almost daily, which had me very skeptical. Also, in a lot of his calls, he linked to public Twitter posts, which was a bit confusing as well, because I came off Twitter to get the stuff I can't get on Twitter behind the paywall, and I'm just getting linked back to Twitter, and not Richie's Twitter, but someone else's research. And then the positivity that I had witnessed on his Twitter wasn't really translating into his Patreon. Like this comment from Mind Toss: "Richie, send me a refund for membership I paid. This Patreon was falsely and fraudulently advertised. Beware guys, Richie is a scam." And then it started to get even more shady, where there were cryptos that he recommended as 100x to 1000x gems that were getting rugged just hours after Richie recommended them. And Richie's response was, "The moment I clicked buy, I considered my money already gone. But then I put back on my logical hat and remembered. It's just a numbers game." And despite not having a lot of social positive proof in his Patreon, we need to add up his actual results from his calls to see if this trading strategy was successful or not. Because as Richie acknowledges, if he was to help you turn $10,000 into $1 million, you wouldn't really care if it was a smooth ride. And this is what he outlines in his trading philosophy. He isn't looking to go 10 for 10 on his crypto calls, but he's looking to make asymmetric bets, where the wins far outpace the losses. In this tweet, he gives out his favorite 10 altcoins that he was invested in at the time. And underneath the list, he wrote this: "I expect 4 of these to rug, 4 of these to fail, and 2 of them to absolutely moon, 100x or more." And we don't have to be math geniuses to figure out if we put $100 into each of these 10 tokens, investing a total of $1,000, 8 of them went to 0, and 2 of them 100x'd, we turn our $1,000 into $20,000. So that's the thesis. But is this actually what Richie is doing, and should we start to put all of our money into it? Well, let's run the numbers from his last 10 token call. Token 10 is a project called Blockscape, and it was recommended on the 13th of April at 11:10 a.m. In just 72 hours, Blockscape's token 2.5x'd, and Richie, who scooped up his first bag 21 hours before he posted in his Patreon, sold most of his profits for a clean 2x return. So far, so good. Token 9 and 8, however, are part of the less pretty side of Richie's strategy. They basically never saw a profit after Richie recommended them, and now sit at about 25 to 30% losses, which really sucks because Richie said he put $20,000 into token 8. Token number 7 is called InvestDex and was recommended on April 18th at 10:31 AM. It did see a quick 22% increase in value just 72 hours after Richie's recommendation, but one of the tough things about playing around with these low market caps is that even if you read it perfectly and wanted to cash out on your 20% gains, there's very little liquidity for you to even get out with. And for those of you who don't know what that means, you basically can't sell. And despite Richie buying his bag both on the 20th of March and then 10 hours before his recommendation in the Patreon, we have no record of him selling. Both tokens 6 and 5 gave Patreon members a 150% returns if you could time the market perfectly. Now I know that's not really a 100x gem, but I wouldn't be complaining. Token 4 and 3 saw some very mild ROIs if you had impeccable timing, but again, when people are envisioning 100x or 1000x returns, I don't see them cashing in for the 20-30% that these tokens go up. And token 3 actually brings up another interesting factor and variable when looking at this data is that about 4 or 5 of these tokens out of the 10 actually only started going up because Richie recommended it, meaning him and his followers were the ones that started the bull run on the token. Now token 2 was a fascinating experience for investors. The project was called Arcadia, and Richie claims to have spoken with the dev himself before investing. However, within minutes after Richie's recommendation, this tiny project soared 80% before the developer rugged the entire project. We have Richie's wallet investing $300 and never selling, but Richie did also claim to have bought $1,500 worth of this token, which again, I hope there's a good explanation for that. And token number 1 was actually Richie's best call of the lot. The project is called Open Network, and Richie recommended it to his Patreon on April 27th at 5:23 PM. Just 22 hours after this recommendation, the token soared to a 575% ROI. And even better news, this token was large enough to have exit liquidity for anyone who wanted to cash in on their gains. So you can see it's sort of a mixed bag, but how did it stack up overall? Well, if you are a member of his Patreon and you invested exactly when Richie the Bull recommended these tokens, you would have had the chance to be up 166% on your investments in just 3 weeks. What does this mean? If you timed the market perfectly, so you sold at every single top, you'd be up 166%. Of course, that's very close to impossible. And if you held on to these tokens and never sold, you'd be down a total of 25%. I'll let you draw your own conclusions to this data, but for us, we're not staying around in Richie's Patreon, but we will be keeping an eye on his wallet to see if there's any of these tokens that we'd like to invest in ourselves.